So 2 years ago, I had to learn the hard way that doctors don't know everything, and it almost cost me my life. I want to start this off by saying I'm just speaking from my personal experience, and I'm just going to give a timeline breakdown of what I went through and how I remember it. This is mostly just to keep a record of probably the most traumatic experience I've ever had in my life. It happened almost 2 years ago now, and the more time that passes, the more likely I am to forget certain things that happened. So I'm just getting on video now, my experience, how I remember it, and that way I can look back and rewatch this video so that I don't forget these things that happened. But let's take it back and start from the beginning. So 2 years ago, I was 26 years old. I was going to the gym. I was decently healthy, a little bit overweight, but for the most part, I was a healthy, young 26-year-old. I had been noticing that the gym, I wasn't making as much progress as I had liked to, and previously, where I would have been in a much better physical condition, I wasn't seeing the same results. So I reached out to my primary care doctor and I said, hey, can I get my hormones checked, my testosterone, everything like that? I just want to make sure that everything is good. Just because I started balding a little bit. The gym wasn't as intense. My sessions weren't as intense as they used to be. So I was just curious. So we did all the hormone tests, and we checked for a couple other things that they normally test, like your red blood cells, white blood cells, all these things. And for the most part, everything was within normal range, except for my platelet count. Platelets are tiny disc-shaped cells that aid with blood clotting, and they're what stop you from bleeding. So if you get a cut on your arm, the platelets will rush to that site and clog it up so that it stops you from bleeding. And the normal range for platelet counts range from between 150,000 to 450,000, and my results came back at just under a million, so over double what the maximum range should be. My doctor reached out and she was like, hey, this is very clearly like a mistake. There's no way that that number is that high. Go get drawn again. They probably just made a mistake when they were testing, or when they were drawing the blood, something went wrong. So I said, okay, that's fine. So we went, got it tested again, same result. So 950,000 was my number, and immediately she referred me to go see a specialist. That specialist saw me. He said, we're going to run some tests on you. They did what's called a bone marrow biopsy, and this is kind of where the start of this entire journey began. The bone marrow biopsy was the first procedure or test that was run, and it was a terrible experience. Number one, it cost a ton of money. They called me and they said, hey, it's going to cost this much. I think it was like over $2,000 with insurance. And I was like, okay, I guess I don't really have a choice. But I was awake for the whole thing. They basically lay you on your stomach. They mark where they're going to, take the bone marrow. And then all of a sudden you just hear like a hammer chiseling away at your spine, just like dink, dink, dink. And then you hear a drill. It goes, and you're hearing every sound. You're feeling the pressure. It was terrible. But anyway, they concluded that I have a genetic mutation called JAK2, and they diagnosed me with what's called essential thrombocythemia. So basically, your bone marrow regulates how many red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets to produce in your body at any given moment. So once you hit the number that you're supposed to hit, that production will be shut off, and it kind of regulates how many cells are flowing through your body. This JAK2 mutation basically does not have a regulating system. So my body is just overproducing platelets without any indication on when to stop. So this is pretty problematic. And here's where it gets interesting on why doctors don't always know best. This doctor looked at me and said, listen, you are not considered a severe case. And any treatment that we give you right now is going to do more harm than good. So basically, to be considered a severe case, your platelet count needs to be over a million. I was still at 950, So I didn't qualify there. Or you have to have a blood clot, a stroke, or a heart attack. If any of these happen, then we can treat you. But until then, we're not going to do anything. I was like, okay, that's kind of strange. Like, I have this genetic mutation. You know that my platelet count is extremely high. Seems pretty problematic. I don't really want to wait for one of these things to happen before you treat me. But nonetheless, we waited. That was diagnosed, I believe, in May. And now we fast forward to August, September time. I think it was September. I was at work and I went out to dinner with some friends. And I got this insane pain in the middle of my chest. Just unbearable pain. And it started off kind of light. I remember complaining about it. I had to skip work that Thursday. I ended up driving back to where I live to visit with my, I go home every weekend back to Palm Springs. So I went back home for the weekend. And the entire weekend I was just complaining about this pain till finally Sunday night, my mom looked at me. She says, "You are not okay. You need to go to the hospital." I said, "Okay, I guess. I'm like, let's go." So we go to the hospital. And it took us a few hours to be seen. I was complaining to the ER doctor, the hospital doctor that was seeing me. I said, "I'm in a lot of pain. I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going on." And he said, "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do some blood work. If the blood work doesn't say anything is wrong with you, we're going to send you home." I said, "Okay, let's just do the blood work." We do the blood work. He comes back and he says, "Everything looks normal." I said, "I cannot go home. I'm in a lot of pain." He said, "We could do a CT scan if you really want." He asked me, "Do you want to do a CT scan?" Me being, the person I am, I was like, if you think it will show something, I would like to do it. He said, "It's not going to show anything." Word for word, he told me, looked me in my eyes and said, "It's not going to show anything. It's going to be a waste of time." I said, "Can we please do it anyway? I can't go home." He said, "Okay." So they did a CT scan. 2 hours later, they come out and they said, "David?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "We're admitting you to the hospital." And I said, "Oh, why is that?" He said, "You have a tumor in your liver, you have a blood clot, you have an enlarged spleen, and you have pancreatitis." 4 things wrong with me from the CT that they were about to send me home from. Regardless, they admitted me to the hospital. I remember sharing, it was a terrible time. I remember this was during COVID and everything. I remember sharing a room with 2 other people, and I was in just an insane amount of pain. No, they were not doing anything to treat me there. All they were doing was giving me some Dilaudid, which was the highest strength pain medicine that you can administer, I believe at the time, besides fentanyl. But regardless, this was the only thing that they could give me that would make the pain go away. Everything else they were doing was not working. I wasn't eating. I wasn't drinking any water. They had me hooked up to an IV to get my nutrition. But this lasted and went on for over a week. And basically what they told me was the next day after they said I had those 4 things wrong, they said, "Oh, it's not a tumor. It's just discoloration. You don't actually have a blood clot. You have psoriasis in your liver, which is for like chronic alcoholics," which ended up not being what I had anyway. So the only thing that they got right was the pancreatitis. And the treatment for pancreatitis is IV fluid and no food or water for 5 days, and then it will get better. So that's what they did. They did nothing for 5 days besides keep me on IV fluids and pain medicine. I don't know if any of you have ever had pain medicine like that before, but you build up a tolerance very quickly to things like that, to where they can give you a dose and then in the next dose you'll need it in 4 hours. After a couple of doses, you'll need it in 2 hours because it will wear off. And then they need to strengthen that dose, and then they need to give it more frequently. And basically it becomes so useless that it just doesn't help anymore. You're getting to the point where you're taking so many opioids that it's doing you more harm than good. And that's basically the path that I was headed. So anyway, they had me seen by a bunch of different doctors. Every doctor was pointing the blame to a different doctor. "Oh, it's the pancreatitis that's causing him to be in pain. That's causing this blood clot. Oh, the blood clot is causing the pancreatitis. Oh, his liver is the issue." nobody could make a diagnosis. For 2 whole weeks, I was just sitting there without food or water, on IV fluids, getting shot up with pain medicine because that's all that they could do for me. Fast forward, to the end of my 2-week stay at this hospital, the doctors went up to my parents and said, he's faking it. He's doing this for attention, and we think he's addicted to Dilaudid. The thing that they were administering me, the thing that they were giving me, they came back and said, he's addicted. The second he gets discharged from here, you need to go take him to rehab. This is what the doctors were telling me. Mind you, they haven't treated me for anything yet. They're just shooting me with pain medicine. That's all they're doing for me. That's the only thing that could relieve my pain, was giving me pain medicine. And then they came back and said, he's faking it. Nothing's actually wrong with him. He needs to go to rehab. My parents finally got sick of it. They said, we are pulling our son out of this hospital. And they looked at me and they said, David, we want to sign a release form so that we can leave and take you to a different hospital. I was terrified of this because the only thing that made me feel better was getting this pain medicine. That's now starting to not work because not only are they being stingy with it, but now they're accusing me of being addicted to it. So at the end of that, they ran the test. They said, for sure he's got a blood clot. This whole time, they still don't know what's going on with me. 2 weeks after I got admitted, right? After so many misdiagnoses, after all the pain medicine I received, IV fluid, they still could not diagnose me. Regardless, I left. We got pulled out of that hospital and we drove to UCLA, which was a much more prestigious hospital at the time. They took me in right away because they saw how much pain I was in. They pulled up my chart because we had tried to transfer to UCLA, but they denied it. So we just showed up there. And they took me in right away. Now, the difference between UCLA and Desert Hospital, which is where I was initially staying at, is UCLA diagnosed me. They said, he's got a blood clot. That's the thing we need to solve for first. They gave me my own Dilaudid pump. So they weren't out here being stingy saying, oh, he's addicted, he's addicted. No, they knew I was in pain, and they knew the only way that I could feel better was this Dilaudid pump. So they literally gave me my own pump that I could administer to myself every 15 minutes, a dose of Dilaudid, and get relief. So night and day difference just from the first 2 days of being there. They diagnosed me with this blood clot, and they ended up going in to do surgery. Now the surgery is through the neck, so they put me under, they stick a catheter in my neck down to where the blood clot is. Apparently my portal vein was completely blocked. There was no blood flow anywhere to my liver. They had tried to put in a stent at Desert. They did the procedure. They said, we know it's not going to fix anything, but we're going to do it anyway. Don't know why they would do that, but they did it regardless. Go to UCLA. They said, hey, we're going to do this surgery. We're going to try to dissolve this blood clot. So they stick the catheter in my neck and they're dripping basically a toxic fluid into where the blood clot is to try and dissolve it. And for that night, I had to stay in the ICU. This was one of the worst nights of my life because I was sitting there basically paralyzed. I could not move my neck. I could not move anything. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't lift myself up out of my bed. If I had to go to the bathroom, I had to have my dad or a nurse hold me up while I tried to use the bathroom. I couldn't walk. I couldn't do anything. I have never felt more useless in my life. I can't explain how that felt. To just not be able to do the things that you take every day for granted, being able to walk, being able to go to the bathroom by yourself. I took all that for granted because when all that was taken away from me, it shocked me. I didn't know what to do. Another traumatic experience was during the surgery where they put the catheter in my neck, they gave me fentanyl to keep me asleep pretty much. And it turns out I had a pretty bad reaction to the fentanyl and I started vomiting everywhere after the catheter was in my neck. So not only now can I not move, but now I'm projectile vomiting. And it just was I threw up all over myself. They had to come clean me up. I couldn't lift my head up to reach for a bag to throw up in. I just was laying there, paralyzed and throwing up. Then I had to go to the bathroom, but I couldn't use the bathroom because, for those of you that don't know, when you're on that many painkillers and opioids, you lose the ability to do certain things. One of those is go to the bathroom. It makes it very difficult. So I physically could not go to the bathroom. And do you know what happens when you can't go to the bathroom by yourself? They put a catheter in you. This was the most traumatic thing I went through in the entire month that I was in the hospital. They basically stick a tube in your wooza and they drain the fluid. And I'm being very undescriptive because that's something I'll never forget. I don't need to put it on camera, but that was some of the most pain I've ever felt. That is just a little bit humiliating, but neither here nor there. So fast forward a couple days in the ICU, the blood clot dissolves, and now they have to take the catheter out. You are awake when they take the catheter out. And not only that, they're going in there to suck up the clot. So I'm awake under a sheet, feeling them stick whatever they were sticking into my neck through the catheter to suck up the blood clot. It was a terrible feeling. I could feel them inflate a balloon, a catheter, not the same catheter that you pee in, but catheter like a stent. They inflate it to open up your blood vessels. I felt that pressure because I was awake the whole time. And the pain meds don't make you numb. They just take some of the pain away. They're opening up my blood vessels. And then they came to take the catheter out. They don't warn you when they take the catheter out because they don't want you to brace for it. So basically, I'm sitting under this cover and I'm not getting any kind of information from the doctor. They're not saying anything. And then all of a sudden, and when they're done, and I don't know that they're done, he grabs the catheter from its base, from my neck, and just yanks it out and then sticks a cloth on me because he's got I'm on blood thinners and I'm on heparin, so I'm gonna bleed out if they don't put pressure on it. So he puts pressure on my wound and he started choking. I thought I was gonna die. I thought he was trying to kill me in that moment because I didn't know what was going on, and there's just a man who pulled something out of my body and is now got his hands around my neck, applying pressure, trying to kill me. That's what I thought. I have a scar right here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but that's where the catheter went in. So they dissolved this blood clot and they sucked it out. I had to spend another probably 2 weeks in the hospital after that. And mind you, this whole time I still wasn't eating or drinking. From the day I got admitted, I spent 30 days in the hospital. I had lost 50 pounds from when I was admitted to when I was released. But it didn't stop there, unfortunately, because nothing can ever be that easy, right? So they put me on blood thinners, and I've been on blood thinners ever since. But probably 3-4 months later, I started to get some pain somewhere else. And they were doing some follow-up surgeries, or not a follow-up surgery, they were doing a follow-up scope to check on some varices that had developed in my esophagus. And while they were doing that, they noticed that I was clotting again in a different spot. So they prepped me for surgery. They admitted me, did the surgery, but they could not complete the surgery. They had to do 2 separate surgeries. So he said, hey, come back in, 2 weeks. We'll do the we'll complete the rest of the surgery. The blood thinners you're on should stop you from clotting any more than this. Come back 2 weeks later. They go in, and the doc, when he told me what he had seen, he said, I've never seen anyone clot as quickly and aggressively as you did in the time since you left from the last surgery. To the point where all the work that they had done previously had completely reclotted. So now he finished the surgery that was supposed to be the second half of the last surgery, he had to start over and then bring me back 2 days later. He said, we can't afford to wait anymore. You need to come back a day or two later so that we can finish the rest of the surgery, or else you're just going to reclot again. Brought me back, same kind of surgery. They actually went in. Did they go in from here? No, they went in through my neck again. And were able to clear the clot. So this was when I was on a different blood thinner. And so this is now the second time that I've been on a blood thinner that failed. So they had to switch me up again, increase the dosage. And till this day, no one gave me a definitive answer on why I clot the way that I do. And now look, I'm no conspiracy theorist, but I feel like it's my duty to just share this information. I got the COVID vaccine in February and March of 2021. And I was admitted to the hospital that September for a blood clot that almost killed me. So you can put two and two together. I'm not saying that's what caused it, but I just find the timing a little bit strange on that. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of parts to this story. And I'm sure that, I'll probably need to record this again, but that's my story. If there's anything that you guys should learn from this, it's to push back when your doctors when you feel like you're not getting the correct care from doctors, especially in a hospital, push back, argue with them, because they don't know everything. And most of the time they're going based off of assumptions or normal routine things that they've studied. And every doctor that I have met with has told me that they had never seen a case like this, where such a young I'm 28 now, but a young person like me has experienced all the things that I have experienced. So that's my story. I'm for sure forgetting parts of it, but I'm currently still on blood thinners. I have to go get checked every couple of weeks to make sure that my blood is not clotting. And I'm probably going to be on it for the rest of my life. So that sucks, but I guess it's a small price to pay to still be alive. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys got any questions, let me know. I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. But yeah, see you guys.